Look at this breakdown of a typical $2,000 paycheck. Imagine you just had a hard month at work. You get the alert saying you've been paid, but when you check your bank account, you only see $1,456. That missing chunk goes towards the modern ritual of paying taxes. It is the cost of civilization. It funds the roads you drive on, keeps schools running, and ensures your favorite taco truck is up to health codes. The government takes a little bit of every dollar through three main routes. Income tax hits the money you make, sales tax hits the money you spend, and capital gains tax hits the money your investments generate while you sleep. Earning a traditional paycheck means automatically surrendering a portion of your physical labor to a massive system you do not directly control. Examine the remaining money carefully. Stripped of the numbers printed on it, a dollar bill is just fiber and ink, with no more inherent physical value than a stick found in the woods. This currency only functions because of a collective social agreement to believe it has worth. This relies entirely on perceived value. If you pick up an average rock, it's just a rock. But if that rock is shiny and yellow, humans decide it's rare. We place a massive value on gold simply because we agree to. You can apply this exact concept to modern wealth. Steve Jobs created a device with such a high amount of perceived value that millions of people willingly handed over thousands of dollars for it. Building wealth requires mastering how to create, control, and trade that perceived value within this constructed social game. Once you have that cash, you probably walk into a bank, hand it to a cashier, and assume it gets locked away in a vault. In reality, banks are just middlemen acting as matchmakers for financial transactions. Under fractional reserve banking, they only keep a small portion of your cash on hand. If you deposit $1,000, the bank immediately takes $900 of it and lends it to someone else who wants to buy a jet ski. To decide who gets to borrow that $900, lenders use a shadowy algorithm that evaluates your past behavior to determine if you can be trusted to pay them back. This sliding scale represents your credit score. It ranges from 300 to 850, calculating rigid data points like your payment history, the age of your accounts, and how much available credit you are actively using. You can have zero debt and still have a terrible score if you lack a history of borrowing. To leverage the bank's money for your own goals, you have to rigorously optimize this three-digit trust algorithm. Even if your money sits perfectly still, it is under constant attack. Inflation slowly erodes its purchasing power. Your $5 bill still looks the exact same, but over time it buys fewer groceries and less gas. This erosion happens when systemic supply chains break down. If a massive global bottleneck occurs and suddenly fewer goods are available to buy, the cost of whatever is left automatically rises. To fight this, the government triggers its primary defensive maneuver, artificially raising interest rates. This makes borrowing too expensive, which suppresses consumer spending and cools off the entire economy. That cooling process brings on a recession. It's an inevitable economic reset where companies are forced to cut costs, jobs vanish, and everyone stops buying things they don't need. Because inflation and recessions constantly eat away at the value of static cash, simply hoarding your money in a bank account guarantees a slow, steady loss of your wealth. The mechanism driving all of this is interest. Conceptually, interest is just money's way of charging rent to exist in someone else's hands. Simple interest is a flat fee, but with compound interest, every dollar creates clones that charge their own rent. On a credit card, missed payments mean debt earns its own debt. A $12 purchase rapidly expands into a crushing $50 liability. Flip the scenario and you see the positive side of compounding. Earning a consistent annual return on your investments turns small initial gains into massive future wealth. Compound interest is the silent engine of the economy. It acts as your worst enemy or your best unpaid employee, depending on who collects it. The required defense against inflation is investing. You have to make the shift from trading your physical time for a paycheck to trading your money for more money. You do this by buying stocks, loaning your cash with bonds, or acquiring property and real estate. But to make any of those vehicles actually work, you need one final asset, the sheer passage of time. The wealthiest individuals don't rely on luck. They rely on decades of patience, allowing time to activate the math of compound growth, so their money multiplies in the background. Navigating these systems effectively comes down to understanding the rules of the game well enough to position your money and your time for consistent, long-term growth.